What's going on, beautiful people? JT here, coming at you with another episode of Pokemon Go, and today we're going to be talking about an upcoming regional Pokemon that's going to be a bit of a difficult grind. And that regional Pokemon is the one and only Scatterbug, a pure bug-type Pokemon, and presumably if you give it 12 or 25 candies, it will evolve into its middle evolution, Spoopa, which is also a pure bug-type Pokemon. But again, presumably, if you give it 50 to 100 candies, it will go to its final form, Vivillon, which is a bug and flying type Pokemon. And you might be wondering why I'm saying that this is going to be one of the more difficult grinds out there when it comes down to regionals. Well, that's because that's not its only form. It has 18 of them. I have all the forms right here on my phone, so let's read them out. First off, we have the Archipelago form. Then there's the Continental form, the Elegant form, the Garden form, the High Plains form, the Icy Snow form, the Jungle form, the Marine form, the Meadow form, the Modern form, the Monsoon form, the Ocean form, the Polar form, the River form, the Sandstorm form, the Savannah form, and the Sun form, and finally the Tundra form. But I'm also lying to you. That's not all of them. There were two others that were introduced later on as event special Pavilions, the Pokeball form and the Fancy form. And to be honest with you, when it comes down to these forms, these feel like Safari Zones / GoFest forms, or possibly even special in-game event forms. So these ones might not be so hard to acquire, but when it comes down to the other ones, it's gonna be a bit of a grind. And the reason why it's gonna be a bit of a grind is because each one of these forms are dependent upon where you are in the world. When it came down to the Pokemon X and Y games, it depended on where your game came from as to which Vivillon form you will get in your game. But when it comes down to Pokemon Go, it looks like it's going to be the same, but dependent upon where you are. The image I'm about to show you is from the Pokeminers, which are on Twitter, and they are data miners, which means the information is potentially spoilery or could change in the future. So this is completely up to you if you see this from this point on, or feel free to check out one of my other videos. But with a couple seconds, I'm going to show you the image right now. As you can see, we have a map here, and specifically underneath it, this was titled Delete Me VVLN for Vivillon, and yeah, it's pretty cool because it's actually showing you where all of the forms are going to be on the planet. But as you can see, this map is pretty low res and kind of hard to see, but luckily, this is the same exact map that the X and Y games used in order to show you where you would be getting the Vivillon, depending on where your cartridge came from. And I found that map online, so let's look at a more detailed map. And this is the map where all the Vivillon forms will be, possibly in Pokemon Go. Obviously, this isn't final, but it looks almost exactly the same as the image you just saw a second ago, so I think this is pretty accurate. And in case you're curious where I got this from, it's from pocketmonsters.net, and they also have another page that I will link below that actually has all the specific countries in which these forms show up. But since we're here, let's look into them. Starting off with North America, the Icy Snow form shows up mostly in the Northern Hemisphere in very remote places. Like, as you can see, it's going to be in Canada, and it also shows up in Russia as well, and parts of Northern Europe, so that's kind of cool. But let's get back to the United States and the North America region. We'll get the Polar form in the northeastern part of the United States, plus parts of Canada and in Alaska. We're also going to get the Modern form in the middle to east section of the United States of America and part of Canada, and this is actually the only place where the Modern form shows up on the map, period. So looks like the United States of America is going to have this one specifically only to itself. The High Plains variant is going to be showing up in the mid to west United States, a little bit of Canada, and in pretty much the top half of Mexico, so that's pretty neat. The Ocean form is going to be one of the rarest forms. Right now, it only looks like it's in Hawaii, but there's also one other place on the planet that this will show up, and I will show you in just a little bit, but this will be one of the rarer forms for sure. And then when it comes down to the Caribbean, we're going to have the Archipelago form. It's going to show up in a lot of places, except for Cuba. Anything that has this light gray on it won't have a form at all, according to this map. Again, when it comes down to Pokemon Go, maybe this will change up a little bit, but for right now, looks like Cuba's going to be out of luck here. But yeah, part of Mexico gets it. The top bit of South America also gets it, but then for the rest of Mexico, you're going to have the Sun form, and I believe there's some other countries here. You'll have to forgive me. I'm not too familiar with all the geography, but basically Central America on the southern part of it is going to be getting the Sun form, and then for the northern bit of South America, we're going to have the Jungle form here. Makes sense because there's the rainforest rainforest, right? Then for places like Brazil and Argentina, there's going to be the savanna form, which is a really nice form, but surprisingly doesn't show up in Africa, which is known for its savannas, so that's kind of interesting. The whole country of Chile is going to have the marine form, which is pretty neat. The continental form shows up a little bit in the south, and then we have the polar form again at the very southern end of South America, because obviously we have Antarctica. And also, I don't believe that Antarctica will have a form at all, which is kind of sad because it's not on this map, so I'm going to just go on a limb here and say that if it's gonna get anything, it's probably gonna get the icy snow variant, because we do have gyms in Antarctica, so we'll see on that one. But if anybody plays in Antarctica, please let me know, because I'd love to know what form shows up there. Now let's make our way to Europe. As you can see, Greenland and Iceland and a little bit of Europe will have the tundra form, and this is going to be one of the rarer ones as well, because unfortunately it doesn't seem to show up anywhere else, except for I do believe it shows up a little bit in the northern part of Hokkaido in Japan. We'll have to check that out in a second. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of forms here. The polar form shows up, the icy snow variant yet again in Russia and in parts of Europe here. The continental form is also going to be in the more northern part of Europe. The garden form is actually going to be one of the more rare forms. It shows up in the United Kingdom, Scotland, England, and Ireland, including the other part of Ireland that's not in the UK. The meadow form, which is the, poster child of Vivillon, is actually going to be showing up in the middle part of Europe, mostly in France, because Generation 6 was based in France, since why this thing is actually kind of like the poster child, because it's, kind of like the main form of the region that it was based on. The marine form is going to show up in quite a bit of the Mediterranean area of Europe, including Spain, which is pretty nice. And then moving on to Africa and the Middle East, the sandstorm variant will be fittingly showing up in the Middle East and parts of Africa. The river variant will be showing up in this area of Africa, which is pretty interesting. And then the sun variant makes another appearance in the southern bit of Africa. The river variant also shows up a little further down here. I don't know what they're going to do with the rest of this, because again, this is Pokemon Go. More than likely, there's going to be more variants, or possibly this river variant's just going to fill out this entire area. We don't know quite yet. And then when it comes down to South Africa gets at least 3 forms on its own. It's going to have the sun variant in it, it's going to have the archipelago showing up at the very end, and then, of course, the river one. This entire bit right here is the country of South Africa. And as you can see right here, this is where the ocean variant is. Again, just off the coast of Madagascar. It's a French island called Reunion, I believe. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but yes, that little tiny blue dot right there is actually going to be an area where this Vivillon will be showing up. So it's not just Hawaii, but more than likely you're better off going to Hawaii, unless you live in South Africa or in Africa somewhere. Heading to Eastern Europe and Asia, you'll notice that the Highlands variant does show up here in China and in other areas in Eastern Europe, so that's kind of cool. And then we're going to have a different variant here, the Monsoon variant, and that's going to be showing up in India and all these other countries, as you can see right here. And the Jungle variant shows up again in this more APAC region of Asia. I think Singapore is like right here, so they're going to get it for sure. And it looks like a little bit of India is going to get their hands on this Jungle variant. So if you live towards the southern end of India, you'll have at least 2 variants you can get. Continental variant's going to be showing up in a big portion of China and in South Korea. North Korea, shockingly, isn't probably going to be getting its own variant. The Monsoon form also is going to be showing up in what looks like, I believe this is Taiwan right here, and it's also going to show up in Okinawa. This little island right here is actually part of Japan, but it will be getting the Monsoon form, so that's kind of cool. And it looks like I was right. In the Hokkaido region of Japan, there will be the Tundra variant, but then there's also the Elegant variant, and this will only show up in Japan. This doesn't show up anywhere else in the world, so looks like Japanese players will have a truly exclusive one on their hands. And last but certainly not least, we have Australia right here, and as you can see, the Northern Territories apparently is going to get the Sun variant, and then the River variant is going to be showing up in the rest of Australia. And then if you go to Tasmania, we will get the Garden variant, so it's not just exclusive to the United Kingdom, it does show up in Tasmania. And even though my face cam is blocking it, I do have New Zealand right here area, and it does have the Garden variant as well. And that's where all the variants are presumably going to be, but I'm sure you're probably thinking that this is going to be an impossible challenge to finish. This is how I think Scatterbug is gonna work in Pokemon Go, and stick with me here because it's kind of hard to explain. Let's just say I catch a Scatterbug on the eastern coast of the United States. So it's registered in the geotag that I caught it, let's just say in Georgia. So when I catch this thing and evolve it, it would turn into the modern form, because that's the form that we get on the eastern coast of the United States. Well, let's just say I really want to get my hands on a meadow form. So I decide to catch one here in Georgia, and then I fly off to the United Kingdom, and then I evolve that Scatterbug that I caught in Georgia in the United Kingdom, well, it would turn into the modern form again because it is geotagged to the eastern coast of the United States. So I'll have to catch a scatterbug in the United Kingdom and then evolve it there, to which it would become a garden variant because the geotag would be registered to the United Kingdom, thus giving it the form that I want. And then if I wanted to bring it back to the United States and I could hand out these scatterbugs to other people when they evolve them in the United States, it would still be the garden variant because, again, the geotag is for the United Kingdom. A lot of you might not be thrilled about that idea because that's an expensive idea. I have to go all the way to another country in order to do this. Not everybody could do that, and I mean, I'm very limited on the amount of times I could do that, so it would take a long time. But there's a cheaper alternative out there. Remote raids. Yeah, I highly believe that Scatterbug is going to be in 1-star raids whenever it gets debuted, which means you could easily do a remote raid in the United Kingdom and you will get the form that you want when you evolve it, because whenever you do a remote raid and you catch that Pokemon, it technically says it's from where you remote raided it. So I'm assuming that this is going to apply to Scatterbug as well, which means all you gotta do is find people from across the world to add you temporarily to the game, do a remote raid in their country, catch that pretty easy to catch Scatterbug, and then you can get quite a few of these forms, though I would imagine some of these are going to be a lot harder to get your hands on. Like, personally, I think that the Icy Snow and the Tundra variants are going to be kind of harder for people to find if you choose to play the game legit, of course. But yeah, I kind of like this idea a little bit better because that also kind of gets us all talking, you know, try to build a community even more, interact with trainers that normally you wouldn't be able to interact with. I personally think that's a really fun idea, but I would love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. And if you found this video informative, please smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Links for my Patreon and merch are in the description box below. But with that being said, this is the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one.